This video is an explanation of the whole primary elections activity and the presidential election activity, which are done together but two really separate topics. And so this is just a way to assess that students understand how primary elections work, how general elections work, and then how the Electoral College is used with presidential elections. But we're going to start off with the primary elections activity, and the directions read that on the day after the Pennsylvania primary election, the Tribune-Review printed the results in a disorganized fashion. Read the table of results, then answer the questions that follow, keeping in mind that Pennsylvania holds a closed primary. Okay, so the first question is, which two candidates will get to run for governor in the general election in November, and why? Let's remember what the primary election does, first of all. Okay, the primary election is where each party chooses their candidate to run against the other party in the general election. And so what we do is we look at Republicans versus Republicans and Democrats versus Democrats. So the easiest way to do this is to just identify who the Republicans are in the table, and we'll do that with a red dot, okay? And then to identify who the Democrats are in the election, we'll do that with a blue dot. And then you simply look and see who wins the popular vote. And remember, the popular vote is simply who wins the most votes. So if we look at the Democrats, okay, we start out, we have Anthony Sacca, he had 60,849. We had Kerry Collins, he has 19,746. And we have Mike Robinson, who had 62,478. So he had the highest vote total. So we have Mike Robinson will represent the Democrats in the general election. And then we look at the Republicans. Okay, we have John Schaefer, got under 10,000 votes. Chuck Fusina had a little bit under 29,000. Tom Bill had less than 3,000. Darrell Clark had the most with 58,000. You can see Johnny Andrus had 24,000 and change. And so Darrell Clark had the most votes out of the Republicans. And so he will be the Republican nominee, all right, in the general election. And so keeping in mind the primaries where each party chooses their candidate. The Democrats, Mike Robinson won the popular vote. Darrell Clark won the Republican popular vote. Then we look at the idea of Sally as a Democrat. So list the last names of the candidates for whom she could have voted. Now, the directions mention the idea of a closed primary. And what that means is that, first of all, you have to be registered to a party in order to vote in the primary. And secondly, you can only vote for members of your party. So if Sally's a Democrat, that means that she can only vote for the Democrats. Sacca, okay, Collins, and Robinson were the three candidates from which she would make her choice. Okay, now the Republicans on the other side, Paul's a Republican, so who could he have voted for? All right, you have Schaefer, and there are going to be 5 Republicans. You have Fusina, Bill, Clark, and Andrus. Okay, and so those are the only candidates for whom Paul could have voted because he's a Republican. Adam is an independent. He's not registered to any party, so for which candidates could he have voted? None, because he is not registered to either party, and because we have a closed primary, he would have to wait until the general election for his vote to be cast. Okay, now in this second section, the instructions read that the Westmoreland County Bureau of Elections needs your help. They ask you to use the primary election results to complete the ballot for November's general election. And so we see there are 3 races. First, office of Mayor of Greensburg, which is a local election, the office of a Pennsylvania State Representative, and remember that person then goes to Harrisburg to represent the area in the state legislature, and then the office of United States Senator, and these people go to Washington. Okay, so you have this situation where this is local, okay, this is state, and this is federal. And so just to show that we have these primary elections at every level. Now, let's first determine who the Democratic nominees are for each office. And so we just compare and see who wins the popular vote. And so we can circle those for each race, and then we just put in the candidate for each office on the ballot. So for the mayor of Greensburg, Tanner would be the candidate for the Democrats. For the state rep, it would be Harris. And for the U.S. Senate, it would be Coffee. Okay, now if we look at the Republicans, we do the same thing, and we circle the highest vote getter in each. Okay, and then we write them into the ballot. So for the Republicans, for the mayor of Greensburg, the candidate will be Carlton. For the office of Pennsylvania State Representative, we see that Greenwood runs unchallenged, and that often is the case whenever an incumbent is running. An incumbent is somebody who already holds the office, and oftentimes they are not challenged from within their own party. And so Greenwood runs unopposed, and then Balfour would be the candidate the Republicans put up for the office of United States Senator. So think of where these people are going to serve. All right, in the mayor race, okay, we're going to have the winner is going to serve in Greensburg, the city in which the mayor governs. For the Pennsylvania state rep, those people will represent the area in Harrisburg, PA, which is the capital of Pennsylvania, and then the U.S. senators are going to represent in Washington, D.C., okay, and they're going to represent the area. So that's what we do with primary elections. And the last thing we're going to take a look at is the presidency itself. Now, in the election of a president, okay, we have now a different situation, because we don't simply just use the popular vote like we do in every other office, whether it's local, state, or federal throughout the United States. Electing the president is a specific thing in which we use what's known as the Electoral College, in which each state is awarded a specific number of electoral votes, and then presidential candidates try to win those electoral votes with the goal of winning the majority of those in order to win the presidency. And electoral votes are awarded to the states based on the factor of population. And we have a specific formula we use to find out how many electoral votes each state gets. And it's simply the number of members in Congress. So it's the number of members in the House of Representatives that a state has, plus the number of senators they have. So basically, number of members of the House plus 2. And that's why Pennsylvania has 18 members in the House, whereas they have 2 senators, so they have 20 electoral votes. And so the first step in completing this activity is simply to determine the electoral votes for each state. So you just look at the number of members of the House and then add 2. So New York has 31, South Dakota has 3, Arizona 11, Florida has 29, Ohio has 18, and Texas has 38. Okay, and then we take a look at how do we determine who wins the electoral votes. And we use the popular vote to do that. And so you see who wins the popular vote in each state, and that determines it. Now, I gave you Pennsylvania as an example here, and Brown, the Republican candidate, won the popular vote in Pennsylvania. Now, how do we distribute the electoral votes? And it's pretty simple. With the exception of 2 states, it's winner take all. So Pennsylvania has 20 electoral votes, and it doesn't matter that the popular vote was relatively close. Brown gets all 20. And it works that way, like I said, for 48 of the 50 states. Now, obviously, I didn't have you do all 50 states here. This is just to give you the idea, and it gets it across into how they are awarded and how somebody wins the presidency. So let's just figure out who won each of the remaining states here by circling the higher vote total in the popular vote. Okay, and then we'll award the electoral votes on that winner-take-all basis. So New York goes to Barnes, the Democratic candidate, so he gets all 31 electoral votes. And you notice we have a third-party candidate, which sometimes happens, Hayes of the Green Party, and we've had that in the elections in the 90s and in the first decade of the 21st century. So I'll kind of explain how they can impact the race here at the end. But South Dakota's 3 electoral votes goes to Brown. Arizona, the 11 there go to Barnes. All right, and then the rest of the states listed here all went to Brown because he won the popular vote in each. And so, obviously, the other two candidates get 0 because of the whole winner take all. So when you add up the electoral votes, you have 108 for Brown. Okay, Barnes has 42, and Hayes has 0. And third-party candidates, it's not realistic that they would even win a state anymore, let alone an election. But again, I'll talk about how they impact here. Now, in real life, you need 270 electoral votes. That's the majority of electoral votes in a presidential race. But we're just going to take the most here to determine the winner. And so we'd say that Brown won the presidency. But if you look at the popular vote totals, there is something a little bit different. Barnes actually had more popular votes than Brown, the Republican who won the election. That is possible and has happened. In the year 2000, Al Gore won the popular vote, yet lost the Electoral College vote to George W. Bush, and therefore George W. Bush became the president. Now, as for members of these third parties, okay, like Hayes and the Green Party, they're never going to win a state probably, and they're certainly never going to win an election, but they can hurt somebody. And the Green Party in general is a party that members would probably vote Democrat if that Green Party candidate wasn't available. So let's see how that can change the election completely. So in other words, Hayes is hurting Barnes, the Democrat. If we would take Hayes out of the race and assume his votes went to Barnes, okay, you could see it would change the results in a couple different states, okay? And I'm just kind of focusing on the states that it would actually change, all right, the results. Because all of a sudden now, you have Barnes winning 3 states, okay? These electoral votes then would go to Barnes, and you would have kind of a landslide the other way, all right? Because then you have Brown only gets 21 electoral votes, okay, and the rest go to Barnes, who would then win the election. In fact, we could have just picked one state. If you would have just looked at Texas, all right, and just changed Texas, that would have been enough to drop Brown down to 70 electoral votes, and Barnes would have had 80, and just Texas alone would have swung the election. So third-party candidates, in other words, aren't going to win an election, but they can determine who does win just by their participation. Now, just to kind of review the whole process of electing a president, we use the Electoral College. Electoral votes are awarded to the states based on the factor of population. The specific formula to determine how many electoral votes a state has is the number of members of the House plus the number of senators equals the number of electoral votes. All but 2 states award those electoral votes on a winner-take-all basis, so we go by the popular vote. Whoever wins the popular vote in that state wins all the electoral votes. And then whoever wins the majority, which is 270, wins the presidency. So hopefully this activity, combined with the primary election activities you completed, give you a better understanding of our whole election process here in the United States.